in terms of the sort of the version of the film and the adaptation or the idea of it, were Mattel cool with that from the beginning? Or did you have any kind of pushback with how kind of radical you were trying to make, or
Yeah.
what
They
was the?
I mean, Mattel were amazing to let us do this,
Mhm.
and, I mean, they're a character in the film,
Yes.
which I don't think they were expecting at all, but they had no idea until the script was done, so Greta and Noah's process is to go away and not let anyone see the script
Okay. Even you?
until they're totally finished. No, even
Wow.
me. We would kinda like, because it was COVID, so they were writing it during COVID, we would
Yeah.
do, talk over Zoom and check in and be like, "How you guys going?" And it was so fun because you could watch Greta and Noah, like, they're like, "Oh, we're working on this idea." So they'd tell us, like, working on this idea,
Yeah.
and then they kinda like, when you talk to a comedian, you can tell sometimes they're, like, testing bits on you?
Yeah.
They kinda, like, test bits with each other, and we would
Right.
just sit and Tom and I would just sit and, like, watch them, and then before you know it, they're kinda writing a scene, but verbally and in front of you, and it's a fascinating process. And they write chronologically, so they don't map
Oh,
something
cool.
out and then write it, which a lot of writers obviously do, but they write themselves into corners and write themselves out of
Yeah,
corners.
like we used to do as kids, just like write
Yeah,
a story and then
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
and, like, let it unfold, and I think because of that, the story has a quality of, you not getting too far ahead of it, like, because they didn't know where it was gonna end
Yeah.
up really. So it was fascinating to kind of watch their process, and I think the movie is so, you know, amazing and original because of that process. Uh, but then, yeah, came the day where the script was in our inbox, and Tom and I sat down on the couch to read it, and, like, even on page 1, I was just like, "Oh, wow, okay. It's gonna be hard to
Yeah.
convince them to let us to do this, but I'm loving it." I mean, it started with a Kubrick reference, like, completely redoing 2001: A Space Odyssey, and
Yeah.
I was like, "Oh, I don't know if this is what Mattel had in mind." And then by the end of the script, I was just like, "Wow, they're never gonna let us make this. It's such a shame that this brilliant piece of writing will never see the light of day because 'cause they're never gonna let us make this." Um, and they did, thank God, and a massive credit to them, but it was a lot of conversations about getting them comfortable
Uh-huh.
with being very, very, very uncomfortable.
So they had a sense of humor.
They did,
Yeah.
and, Mattel, they're a toy company, and they haven't made a movie before, so there
Yeah.
was also, like, a educational process of, like, "Oh, okay, this is what you're reading on the page." It took a second for me to realize that some of their concerns could be assuaged just by explaining the process of
Yeah,
making the
yeah,
film.
yeah.
For some things, they're like, "But Barbie's saying this," and I'd be like, "Okay, but this is how I'm gonna do it." And
Yeah.
then I'd say it, and they're like, "Oh," and I'm like, "See how my face is telling you that I don't think that, but the
Okay.
words are saying that."
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But that's subtext, and there's subtext all through the, so, and they'll be like, "Oh, okay." So they, and then still there's some jokes where they're just like, "Do we have to use the word fascist? Do we, do we need that bit where Mattel employee gets shot? Do they have to be shot?" We're like, yeah. So there were certain jokes, and I was so prepared to, like, fight for certain jokes,
Mhm.
and then, like, to explain, like, "No, we have to have that joke because it this and this and this." And some of them, they're just like, we're fine with, and then other jokes I didn't think they'd have a problem with, but it was never a case of, "Oh, they didn't like that, so let's cut it." It was, "No, no, no, we need to explain why we think that should be in it
Yeah.
and get everyone, like I said, comfortable with being uncomfortable." Did you think so many people were gonna watch a movie about the making of the atomic bomb?
Um, um, no. Christopher Nolan was always determined that it would be released in the summer as a big tentpole movie. That was always his plan, and he has this kind of superstition around that date, the
Do all his
21st,
movies come out on that date?
in and around the 21st of July, or it could be always the 21st. They always come out then. And
I mean,
so
it's a good date.
it's a good day. It
We
is
picked that
now.
date too.
Yeah, I know.
I remember one of the producers, Chuck
Yeah.
Groven, called me because we worked together on some other projects. And
Okay.
he was like, "I think you guys should move your date." And I was like, "We're not moving our date. If you're scared to be up against us, then you move your date." And he's like, "We're not moving our date. I just think it'd be better for you to move." And I was like, "We're not moving. I think this is a really great pairing, actually. I think it's like,
Well,
it's a perfect double billing, Oppenheimer and Barbie."
that was a good instinct.
Clearly, the world agreed.
Yeah,
Thank
they
God.
did. But I think that both of these films show the appetite that the audience has
Yeah.
for cinema.
I'm always like, everyone talks about the algorithm. I'm like,
Yeah.
how on earth is an algorithm tracking me? Because I have such an eclectic
Yeah.
taste. If you look, you'd be like, wow, she's going from, that black and white film from the 20s to Love Island. So,
Yeah.
like, what box do I put her in?
Yeah.
Same thing. But the fact that people were going and being like, I'll watch Oppenheimer first, then Barbie. I was like, see,
Yeah.
people like everything. People are weird. People have
Yeah.
specific and wide-ranging tastes.
And they don't like being told what to do.
Yeah.
Audiences don't like being told you should see this or you should see that. They will decide and they will generate the interest themselves. And I think what happened with both of our movies was a case in point of that the audience decided, that this was correct and this was right.
I think they were also really excited by the filmmakers.
I think you're right. Yeah, I think
People
you're
were
right.
like itching for the next Chris Nolan film and itching for the next Greta Gerwig
Yes.
film. To get them at the same time was, exciting. Because I'm a fan of yours, I have watched a lot of your things on the internet, on YouTube. And there's kind of like, it's out there on the internet that you're not that aware of memes and things like that. First of all, is that true? And second of all, if that is true, were you even aware of the Barbenheimer phenomenon, or were you just blissfully unaware because you use a dial-up phone or something?
No, I have teenage boys. I have 2 teenage boys, so
So
they keep doing this. So, and I do know what a meme is. Now I know that there are memes about me not knowing what a meme is.
It's a great meme.
But
It's like Inception of memes, a meme within a meme.
It is. I genuinely, at the time, did not know. But people forget that was
a while ago.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah, a long time ago. Yeah. I might not have known back then what a meme is.
No, and I mean,
I'm not that tech savvy.
Exactly, and I think children started that stuff, right? So So it wasn't necessarily. But now that it's become this sort of like meme that's eating itself, I am aware, but it's mostly because of people either sending it to me or showing, saying, "Look, you got to look at this."
Yeah.
But I do think that.
Did you see any of the Barbenheimer?
I mean, it was
fan art?
impossible to
Wasn't there some great ones?
avoid any of that stuff. Which is
People are so clever with the things they come up
it was incredible, and it was self-generated. You know what I mean?
I know. People kept asking me. They're like, "So the studio's talking. Each marketing department's talking to each other." And I was like, "No, this is the world doing this.
The world.
This is not a part of the marketing campaign. This is just happening."
And I think it happened because like both movies were good.
Yeah.
That's the thing, and there was a sort of a diversity offered by both movies. In fact, that summer there was a huge diversity of stuff in the cinema, and like I think it just connected in a way that you or I or the studios or anybody could never have predicted. We could never
You can't force
have
that.
predicted.
You
No,
can't orchestrate that.
no,
Just
and it may never happen again.
I know.
You know,
I mean, it was wild seeing that many people going to the movies.
yeah.
Wild. Did you go to the movie?
Did you go to see Oppenheimer or did you go to see Barbie?
Do you sneak out and see like what the vibe is? I mean, we were going around to cinemas checking like levels and things like that.
Yeah. Well, I guess you're a producer and you got to do that. I try to avoid looking at myself. I struggle with it.
But isn't the mask the best thing?
The what?
Now,
Oh, yes.
I wear a mask everywhere.
Yes,
And I
that
can go
is.
everywhere again. It's so
But
good.
I wouldn't volunteer to go in to see myself.
No.
But I do know that Chris and Emma, Chris Nolan and Emma Thomas, his wife, producer, I think they were sneaking into.
Checking how it was.
Yeah. But then like the fact that people were going dressed up as Barbie or dressed up as Oppenheimer to go and see the movies multiple times, it's kind of so flattering and kind of overwhelming and so great for cinema.
Totally.
Yeah.
But you've done 5 movies with Christopher Nolan now.
This
right?
is 6 actually.
6? Really?
Yeah.
So you like the guy? Big fan.
It seems to work. I mean, this is the first time playing a proper lead role for him. They'd always been supporting parts over the years. It's 20 years we're working together.
Has your relationship changed or evolved in that time?
I mean, I think that it's probably gotten, richer. I think, I was certainly just kind of starting off back then or starting to work properly in film, and he had just made the leap from making independent films into making big studio movies, and he was taking over this franchise for the first time with Batman Begins, and obviously just nailed it. But I think he's refining his kind of vision and how the types of stories he wants to tell and how he wants to present them. Like moving into IMAX, and it was the first
When did he
director to do
start
that.
shooting always in the large format?
I think it was Dark Knight, where I think that opening sequence at the beginning, I think that's in IMAX. You remember when Heath breaks into the bank and all that? I think that's in
Yeah.
IMAX. I think that's I could be wrong, but I think that's one of the first times that he started using it. But like in Oppenheimer, we were using it almost all of the time.
Yeah.
And they come at you, it's like
And it's on film. I mean, those cameras must be so heavy,
yeah,
so loud.
so loud, so heavy. Have you worked with him with IMAX?
No.
It's
But I know he shoots on IMAX and always on film. So
Yeah.
I imagine like to get more than a 4-minute take, those mags must be massive.
they're huge, and our amazing DP Hoyte was like carries him everywhere. Like I remember in Dunkirk, we'd be like on a boat in the middle of the ocean, and Hoyte would have the thing on his shoulder, and it's like these beautifully composed shots. But to answer your question, I don't know. I suppose as you get older, you just get a bit more confident in this sort of stories you want to tell. And I suppose I've learned a huge amount from working with Chris in terms of focus and rigor and dedication. I think we have similar tastes, and I think he may have helped form my tastes. But before I even worked with him, the movies that he had made prior to Batman Begins, I was a fan of, and I really just wanted to meet him. And that happens a lot, isn't it? Like you're fans of directors and then you get to meet them, and next thing you're working with them, and it's kind of nuts because you were at home watching their movies when you were a kid.
I don't know if it happens a lot, but when it does happen, it's like magic.
This is true.
Amazing.
I'm sure that's happened to you.
It has. I've like reached out to people I really want to work with.
Yeah, I've done that. Written letters.
And the letter thing does work, I have to say.
It does.
I mean, sometimes it doesn't, but sometimes it does.
People appreciate a handwritten letter that you sat down to write. I believe in that.
Yeah. I feel like I don't like playing lead roles because I feel like you have more responsibility, and like as a supporting role, you can kind of be a little more like wild and I don't know, like I avoid playing lead roles.
Really?
I haven't done it that much. Not where like my character's the name of the movie.
Yeah.
Only I, Tonya, have I done that really. Did you feel that sense of like, oh, I have to carry the weight of this story because I am playing Oppenheimer and the movie is Oppenheimer? Or did you approach it, did it feel just the same as when you've worked with him in other instances?
No, it did feel different. Like he called me up out of the blue because he's never I didn't even know he's writing it. So he called me up out of the blue, or Emma Thomas, his wife, the producer. She called me because Chris doesn't have a phone, so she put me on to Chris, and he said in his very understated British way, I'm just making this movie, I'm Oppenheimer, I'd like to play the part. And so it was like wham, out of nowhere. Luckily, I was unemployed at the time. I just finished something. I wasn't doing anything. But I did realize then that it was different to the other jobs I'd done with him because it was the story of Oppenheimer's life. And then when he eventually gave me the script, it was written in the first person, which I'd never read before. And so I kind of...
The script was written in the first person?
Yes.
Like the big print would be like, I'm going to put the cup down and move towards the door.
Exactly.
That's
which I'd never read before. And so it was very clear that he wanted it to be truly subjective storytelling, and that did add to the response, the feeling of like, oh fuck, this is a biggie. But then I knew as well that he was going to people it with all these extraordinary actors, and the thing about all those roles is they're all characters of significant consequence. They're very consequential characters in history and in the movie. We put all these extraordinary actors in the... Yeah, it was bonkers. Every time he would tell me, Gary Oldman's going to pop in, and we got Downey to play Straws. But I suppose what I'm trying to say is that you felt very, very supported and secure in that. Because you knew...
share the burden a little bit with
completely.
Cast.
It felt lovely, and I think I've developed a short time with Chris over the years. Like we do understand each other. I think we share a similar kind of taste or approach to storytelling. He's a master. He's a master filmmaker.
Why do you love working with him, and why do you think he loves working with you?
You'll have to ask
I know
him
you're going to be really humble and be like, I don't know, why does he like me? I can't understand. But
I don't know. I mean,
take a guess.
With Chris, you see, it's just the work. Like he's not interested in anything else other than the work and the filmmaking, and he is incredibly focused and it's incredibly rigorous.
Is it true he wears a suit every day to set?
He does wear a very similar attire every day. But the reason I think that is, I think it makes sense to me is that it's as a director, you have so many decisions
Greta wore a boiler suit every
every
day.
day.
She had a different one for every day of the week. She was like, it's one piece of clothing. It's got pockets so I can put my notebook and pens and all
Yeah.
that. And she was like, it's a decision I don't have
Yeah.
to make, and I have to make 1,000 today.
You take that off the
That's one
board.
thing.
Yeah.
And then while we were shooting, I went to the Churchill War Museum and saw that Winston Churchill did the same thing. He had like this boiler
There you
suit, and I was
go.
like, Greta,
It makes a lot of sense.
it makes total sense.
And I imagine if she wore something different on set, it would freak you out. I mean, if
Totally.
Chris came in a, I don't know,
Hawaiian shirt.
it would freak me out. I wouldn't be
Hawaiian
able to concentrate, and I don't think the crew would.
Yeah.
So I think it's a sensible choice, actually.
And prepping for the role, what's your prep process like?
I mean, I don't know about you, but I'll take as much as I can get.
Yeah.
With this one, it was 6 months from when he called me to when we started shooting, and I would have taken another 6 months if I could have got it.
When he called you and said movie about Oppenheimer, were you like, gotcha, or were you like, I should go
It
read the
was.
book. I know nothing about it.
I knew kind of very basic, Wikipedia
Mm.
level. No, I knew about the Trinity tests, and I knew about, the Manhattan Project, and then obviously what happened in the second in 45. But like I didn't know what happened afterwards or anything like that.
Yeah.
Um,
So you read a lot to prep. What else do you do?
like walk around my basement talking to myself.
Really? Do you
Yeah,
record yourself?
I do sometimes. Do you?
No, only if I'm doing dialect stuff.
Yeah.
But I prep like a psychopath as well.
Yeah, it's the only way, isn't it?
I'll prep as long as I possibly can. I remember I started prepping one role and then COVID happened. And so I ended up prepping the one role for like a year. And I was like losing my mind by the end of it. My husband walked in and I was like making like weird masks and stuff. And I was like covered in paint. He's like, what are you doing? And I was like, I think I've gone too far with this character. We need this to end. I need to get on set.
It's the only way, though. I think this is the only.
Because then I can walk on set and just be like totally free.
Yeah.
But if I hadn't prepped, like I'd be so terrified. Like when I hear some other actors, I like look at their script and there's nothing written on it. I'm like, I'd be so terrified if I didn't have like a bazillion notes and thoughts.
Yeah.
Then I'd be having all those thoughts on set as opposed to just like.
Exactly. And I think, when you get on set, time is your most important commodity, as you know, and the last thing you want to be doing is
Finding it.
figuring it out.
No.
You got every second counts, so you want to do all the figuring out before and then park it, And Chris is the king of prep, and I don't know if Greta's the same, but he has crew that he works with forever and HODs that he's worked with forever, so they know how he works, and he preps with those guys for a long, long time. And so when we come on set, it's like it's fast.
Like go time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's really, really fast. And he just kind of expects excellence from everyone.
I love that.
Yeah, which I think all the best ones do.
Yeah.
And I think everyone gets that. It's an unspoken thing, right?
Yeah.
And tell me about casting your movie then. What was your kind of goal or plan to when you were casting it? And what was your?
I mean, most people's names were written into the script.
Oh, really?
Like I was Barbie Margot, and it said Ken Ryan Gosling. Like
Wow.
everyone, Greta kind of manifested the cast she got. Also, everyone was so keen to do it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people signed on to do like a long movie where they've got a pretty small role. And agents were like, why would we let our client be busy for this long and for this much screen time? But, their clients would be like, no, I want to do it. I want to work with these people and I want to work with Greta. And we just said from the start, like, let's make a massive dance party, invite everyone. And it was like that on set. Like it was so fun. Every day was so fun. And we'd be playing music and we would dance in the morning. Like the crew cast, everyone would like dance in the morning.
Really?
Just to like get everyone. It was so funny because we were shooting at Leavesden. Other films like the Fast movie, like Fast 10 or whatever, they'd like come over and they're like SWAT gear kind of be like, what's going on in here? And we're like, it's Barbie Land, come in. And
wow.
People were just like gravitating towards the set because our actors, everyone would come in on days that they weren't even working because
Just to hang out.
because it was so fun. Like you just wanted to be there with everyone, and it was such a good group.
I
Like,
think you can kind of feel that in the movie.
yeah,
I do think that stuff transfers.
definitely.
Yeah,
And I think it all trickles down from the top. Like, whatever
yeah,
mood the director sets,
yeah,
it's like it seeps into everything. And Greta just sets like the most like joyful space. I
yeah,
mean, I can't speak to her other sets. Wasn't on them, but I mean, she's so joyful and supportive and exciting, and just she's just brilliant, and you can feel that.
yeah.
And I don't know, I always think of it like it's like when little kids can sense that their parents are like angry or frustrated, even if like a parent's like, I'm fine, but they're slamming the dishes, you know, like a
Yeah,
kid's gonna be like a little bit like on edge, even if they don't understand it. They're like, you know,
yeah,
that happens on a film set. Like I've seen that happen where you
yeah.
can just feel everyone tensing
Mhm.
because you know your director or someone else in a position of, you know, importance
Yeah,
is giving that vibe, and everyone's suddenly like a little apprehensive, and that's
yeah,
and we just did not need that
yeah.
vibe
It
for
has
a
to come from the
Barbie
top,
set.
doesn't it?
Maybe that would work for some movies, but that wasn't going to work.
Yeah, I don't enjoy that.
It's just not funny though. Like,
It's it can't go to work. Like I don't know
yeah,
if you're going to be vulnerable. I feel like you need a place that's trusting and
yeah,
caring.
yeah. Did you have access to a lot of, you know, archival footage in order to replicate the mannerisms or physicality of Oppenheimer?
Yes, there's a lot of stuff online, like just on YouTube.
Mm.
The
God, I love YouTube.
love a bit of YouTube.
It's like my biggest tool for
You
any
just
character.
disappear down there, can't
Yeah.
you? The problem with footage of him was mostly him giving lectures, and so it's quite performative. You know, it wasn't.
The real him.
Yeah. So I used that a little bit, but we had to kind of imagine how he would be, you know, with his wife or with his colleagues and stuff like that. That we had to kind of make up.
Did you have like a thing that would get you into him? You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, I do. Physically, there was loads of pictures of him, and he always stood with his hand on his hip. And you see all these pictures because he was such a slight man, but he always stood with this very kind of jaunty angle with his hand on his hip. So I nicked that pretty quick early as a sort of a physical thing. And then Chris Nolan kept sending me pictures of David Bowie, you know, like in this sort of thin white juke era
yeah.
with the big
I see
voluminous
that.
trousers. Yeah. man.
Wow.
So we kind of stole that a little bit.
It's like, I don't know where you are, even though she was written beautifully in the script. Anyways, I went to Greta and I was like, help me. I don't know where to start with this character. And I was like, she was like, okay, what are you scared of? And I was like, I don't want her to seem dumb and ditzy, but she's also not meant to know anything. She's meant to
Yeah.
be completely naive and ignorant. And Greta found this episode on This American Life podcast where it was a woman who doesn't or can't introspect, like doesn't have the voice in her head
Oh, wow.
that's like constantly narrating life
Yeah.
the way we all do. And so that was like an instance where I was like,
Wow.
oh, so she doesn't have that voice. And this woman's like, you know, got a PhD and is extremely smart, but just doesn't have that internal monologue.
Is she happy?
Yeah, totally. And
Is she happier, do you think?
God, I wondered about that. You know, when the interview was asking her, like, so if you're like looking out a window, she's like, I'm just looking out a window. She's like, it didn't even occur to me that it didn't
Wow.
introspect until one day I suddenly realized as a grown woman that my parents were one day going to die. And she was like inconsolable,
Yeah.
thinking that. And her boyfriend was like, what's wrong? She's like, my parents are going to die one day. And he was like, had you not thought about that before? She was like, no. She kind of thinks exactly what's in front of her, like a spotlight to what exactly is in front of her at the time.
Well, that's perfect.
Yeah, it was
right?
really interesting. So
Yeah.
things like that, I was like, wow. And then Greta's like, you know, references for, okay, I want the cadence of your speech to be like, we did this thing called movie church. So every Sunday morning we would invite all the cast and crew, whoever wanted to come to the Notting Hill Electric
Oh, cool.
cinema, which is
cinema.
such a good
Yeah,
cinema,
yeah.
and watch a movie that was somehow related to Barbie.
Like what,
And
for example?
so like, for example, we'd watch His Girl Friday because Greta would be like, I want all the Barbies at the dance party to have that rhythm, like when they speak, like it should be like da, 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 da. And it's funny, Greta sometimes I think she uses this to find the comedy in scenes too. She doesn't look at the monitor, like she closes her eyes and she just listens to a scene.
Yeah.
She's really tuned into like the rhythm,
Yeah.
which is really interesting. But then there might be a reference like we'd watch The Red Shoes because
Yeah.
we were coming up with the LUT for the camera, like the color chart, you know, the
Yeah.
IB Tech, we called it, techno Barbie because we wanted it to look like that kind of like really poppy, saturated 50s soundstage musical. Or we'd watch 2001: Space Odyssey because there's a
Yeah.
reference. Gosh, we watched so many movies.
What a nice thing to
It
do.
was the best. It was so fun. And then weirdly, I was kind of playing my mom a little bit.
Really?
Yeah. Because my mom is so pure. Like she's so, I don't know. Maybe you'll meet her one day. It'll make sense. But it was funny one day on set. I was like a little bit conscious that I was doing that. But one day on set, my mom was visiting and Greta like turned to me. She was like, "Oh my God, you're playing your mom, aren't you?" And I was like, "Yeah, a little bit, yeah."
And what does she think of the movie?
She loved it. Yeah. Do you know what though? Afterwards, I was like, did you like that? Did you like that line where Ruth says, "Us mothers stand still so that our daughters can see how far they've gone"?
Uh-huh.
I was like, "Did that make you cry?" And she was like, "No." And I was like, "Oh, really?" She was like, "I thought it was a very well written line though." I was like, "Oh, I'm so angry that didn't make me." What did your parents think of Oppenheimer?
Oh,
Do they like praise you or try to keep you down to earth and like do that thing that your family does where they're like keeping your feet on the ground?
they are very proud, yeah, by it all. I really wanted them to see it, like with an audience in the cinema. I think they saw it in Paris, and yeah, they were a little. It's a little. The movie's a little overwhelming,
Do you know how I saw it?
No.
I was in a cinema and it was a really hot day in London and the AC stopped working.
Oh no.
So
Oh no.
it was almost like we're having a 4D experience.
It was like Chris designed it.
Because it was like literally like getting hotter and hotter and they're building the bomb. And by the time the bomb was going off, I was like literally dripping with sweat with everyone else in here. It was so hot.
That's excellent. You actually built the sets.
Yeah.
For real, yeah.
Yeah, it was incredible. We built that whole cul-de-sac. The dream houses are like several stories high. Everything's like hand painted, all the backdrops hand painted. We made all of Barbie Land in miniature, filmed the miniatures. Yeah, everything was very tactile and the transportation sequence, all that. It's like practical and like a diorama and there's like, literally people like holding a rod with a butterfly dangling off it. And, everything was just the handmade quality of it was so intrinsic to the movie anyway, because it's meant to be a toyetic world. It's meant to be toys and you should feel like you could reach in and grab it all.
But it does make a difference, I think. I mean, I don't know if the audience knows on a kind of a conscious level, but I really believe that they experience on a subliminal level that this is happening in camera.
I agree, and I know Chris Nolan definitely lives by the same rules of like everything's in camera, everything's practical, and I think what CGI can do, what VFX can do, is like incredible, and as a tool, to complement work, it's amazing. But when it's relied on too heavily, there's something about that like infinite quality to like looking at something that's just like could go on forever where I don't know, I find I get detached. I'm kind of like something in me can sense that it's not real and so I don't really care. I don't really care if that thing explodes or that building falls down because it's not real. Like you just know when it's not real.
Yeah, I think we do now. I think definitely we're kind of inured to it at this stage. On Oppenheimer, there was no set builds. It was all real locations. Every single location was the actual place. A lot of it was like Oppenheimer's house, where we shot in New Mexico, was actually where he lived. Yeah, with Kitty. When myself and Emily were filming in there,
How good's Emily?
She is astonishing.
I love her
in the movie.
so much.
I think there's just like she can do anything. Emily, it's kind of.
I would watch her in anything. I don't need a log line. I don't need a title. If I see she's in it, I'm like, I'm in. I'm gonna love it. She's so charming.
Mind blowing.
But yeah, so you shot in New Mexico. Where else?
Yeah, and I think you can feel the kind of. This sounds kind of like cliche or hokey or something, but I feel like you can feel the vibrations in the room. I feel like they transfer to the character. I feel like we then have an extra level of connection or respect for the environment or for the characters, particularly if they're real life characters that actually live there.
Yeah.
So yeah, and we shot in Oppenheimer's office in Princeton, which was right next to Einstein's office in the real location. And there was many of those instances where you feel you kind of, it's goosebumps, Like I'm not a superstitious person or anything like that, but
No, you feel the vibes.
you feel it.
Yeah.
Chris wanted that.
Yeah.
And for example, the last sequence in the movie, they flash backwards and forwards to it, but the whole big hearing at the end, that was in this horrible, shitty, little bureaucratic, tiny room somewhere outside of LA. And it was really hot, and we were all of us stuffed into this room with these huge IMAX cameras. We could have easily built that in a big stage and pulled away the walls, but Chris wanted it to feel like claustrophobic, sort of awful feeling that you would have had in one of those rooms. And they deliberately wanted to put him in a room like that to make him feel like he was worthless and that it was kind of meaningless and to demean him. Wow. And it worked.
Obviously, I've now revealed that I am a big fan of yours. Not just Peaky Blinders, I also love your Sleep Story on the Calm app.
Oh,
and
thank you.
Just everything you've done, really.
Well, likewise.
I mean, it is crazy that after all this is literally the first time I'm ever meeting you. So
yeah, likewise.
It's been nice.
Very formal setting.
I know, I know.
Well, nice to chat to you, Margot.
Hopefully not for the last time.
Exactly.